The Corvani ship moved slowly through the Velar Nebula. It was a small vessel, built for science and exploration, not for war. The crew of 12 worked quietly at their stations, scanning the stars and recording data about the strange gases that filled this part of space. Captain Threnvok stood at the center of the bridge. He was tall, like all Corvani, with gray skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. His eyes were large and filled with a soft blue light. He had commanded this ship for 20 years, and in all that time, he had never fired a weapon at another living being. The Corvani were not warriors. They were scientists, traders, and farmers. They believed that the universe was meant to be understood, not conquered. "Captain," said one of his officers, a young female named Celerin, "I am picking up a strange signal. It is coming from Sector 7, about 2 hours from our current position." Threnvok walked over to her station and looked at the screen. The signal was weak and broken, but it repeated in a pattern that he recognized. It was a distress beacon. "Can you identify the source?" He asked. Cela-Rin worked at her controls for a moment. "The ship design does not match anything in our database. It is not Corvani. It is not from any species we have contact with. The vessel appears to be heavily damaged. I am not detecting any life signs, but the signal is still active." Threnvok thought about this. The Velar Nebula was dangerous. The gases played tricks on sensors, and many ships had been lost here over the years. Going to investigate would take them off their planned course. It would cost them time and fuel. But somewhere out there, someone had called for help. "Set a course," he said. "We will investigate." The ship changed direction and moved deeper into the nebula. The gases grew thicker, and the stars became harder to see. The crew grew quiet as they approached the source of the signal. When they finally arrived, they found a small spacecraft floating among the debris of what had once been a larger ship. The vessel was torn open. Pieces of metal drifted in the darkness. Whatever had happened here, it had been violent and sudden. "There," said Celerin, pointing at her screen. "That small craft. It separated from the main ship before the destruction. I am now detecting a very faint life sign. Just one." Threnvok did not hesitate. "Prepare the docking arm. We will bring it aboard." The crew worked quickly. They extended the mechanical arm from their ship and carefully pulled the damaged craft into their cargo bay. The atmosphere inside the small vessel was almost gone. Whatever was alive in there did not have much time left. Threnvok led a team to the cargo bay. They wore breathing masks because they did not know what kind of air the alien ship contained. When they cut through the outer door, they found a scene of chaos. Equipment was broken. There was blood on the walls. And in the center of it all, strapped into a pilot's seat, was a creature unlike anything they had ever seen. It was small compared to a Corvani, with pinkish skin and dark hair on its head. It wore a torn uniform and had wounds on its face and arms. Its eyes were closed, and it was barely breathing. "What is it?" asked one of the crew members. Threnvok knelt beside the creature. He could see the rise and fall of its chest, slow and weak. He could see the pain on its face, even in sleep. He did not know what species this was. He did not know if it was friendly or dangerous. But he knew one thing for certain. "It is alive," he said, "and it needs our help." They carried the creature to their medical bay. The Corvani doctor, an old male named Brentok, examined it carefully. He was confused by what he found. The creature had 2 eyes, 2 ears, a mouth, and a nose. It had 5 fingers on each hand and 5 toes on each foot. Its internal organs were different from Corvani organs, but they seemed to work in similar ways. "I do not know how to treat it," Brentok admitted. "Our medicine may not work on its body. It may even be harmful." Threnvok looked at the creature lying on the table. Its breathing was getting weaker. If they did nothing, it would die. "Do what you can," he said. "We must try." For 3 days, the creature hung between life and death. Brentok worked without sleep, trying different treatments, watching how the creature responded. Some things helped. Some things made it worse. Slowly, through trial and error, he learned how to keep it alive. On the 4th day, the creature opened its eyes. Threnvok was there when it happened. He saw the panic in those strange round eyes. He saw the creature try to sit up, try to fight, try to escape. He held up his hands in a gesture he hoped was universal. "You are safe," he said in his own language. "No one will hurt you." The creature did not understand his words, but something in his tone seemed to calm it. It stopped struggling and lay back down, breathing hard, looking around the room with fear and confusion. Over the next few weeks, they learned to communicate. The creature was called a human, and her name was Katie Morgan. She came from a planet called Earth, very far away in a part of the galaxy the Corvani had never explored. She had been traveling with a small crew when pirates attacked their ship. She was the only survivor. Katie was scared at first. She did not know these strange gray beings with glowing eyes. She did not know if they wanted to help her or study her or eat her. But as the days passed, she saw that they were kind. They gave her food from their own supplies, even though they did not have much. They gave her medicine, even though they did not know if it would work. They gave her a warm place to sleep and clothes to wear. Threnvok visited her every day. He brought her pictures and books, trying to teach her his language while learning hers. They spent hours pointing at objects and saying the words for them. Table, chair, water, food. Friend. Katie learned that the Corvani were a peaceful people. They had no weapons on their ship. They had no soldiers in their crew. When she asked Threnvok why they had stopped to help her, he seemed confused by the question. "You were dying," he said simply. "What else could we do?" After 3 weeks, Katie was strong enough to walk. After 4 weeks, she was almost fully recovered. The Corvani repaired her communication equipment and helped her send a signal to a human trade route nearby. On the day the human freighter arrived to take her home, Katie stood in the cargo bay with Threnvok. She had tears in her eyes, something the Corvani did not fully understand. She reached out and took the captain's hand in hers. "You saved my life," she said. "You did not know me. You did not know my people. You had nothing to gain, but you saved me anyway." Threnvok looked at her with his gentle, glowing eyes. It was simply the right thing to do. Katie hugged him then, wrapping her arms around him in a way that was strange but not unpleasant. The Corvani did not embrace this way, but he understood the meaning. "I will never forget this," she whispered. "None of us will. If you ever need help, if you ever need anything at all, my people will come. I promise you that." Threnvok smiled, though he did not think much of the promise. The Corvani had lived in peace for thousands of years. What trouble could possibly find them? He watched the human freighter disappear into the stars. Then he returned to his duties and continued his quiet life among the nebula. He had no idea that her promise would one day save his entire world. 12 years passed like water flowing down a gentle river. THRN-VOK retired from his position as captain and returned to Corvax Prime, the homeworld of the Corvani people. He built a small house on the edge of a crystal lake, surrounded by trees that glowed with soft blue light when the sun went down. He had a wife, 2 children, and 4 grandchildren who visited him every week. Sometimes, late at night, he would sit on his porch and look up at the stars. He would think about the human woman he had saved all those years ago. He wondered if she was still alive. He wondered if she still remembered him. He hoped she had found happiness wherever she was. Life on Corvax Prime was good. The planet was beautiful, with oceans so clear you could see the bottom even in the deepest parts. The forests were full of life, and the cities were clean and peaceful. The Kovani had no army, no weapons, no need for violence. They traded with other species, shared their knowledge, and lived in harmony with their world. But the galaxy was not a peaceful place far across the stars. In a region of space that the Kovani had never visited, there was an empire called the Drevnak Collective. The Drevnak were insect-like creatures with hard shells and many legs and eyes that saw only prey. They did not trade. They did not negotiate. They conquered. They had destroyed 12 civilizations in the last 100 years, taking their resources and enslaving their people. And now, they had turned their attention to the Kovani. The first warning came from a trading ship that barely escaped the outer edge of Kovani space. The captain, a young male with fear in his eyes, reported seeing a massive fleet of strange ships moving through the darkness. The ships were black and covered with spikes, like insects made of metal. There were hundreds of them. The Kovani Council met in emergency session. They sent messages to the fleet, asking them to identify themselves. The response came quickly. We are the Drevnak Collective. Your world has been chosen for harvest. You will surrender all resources and submit to processing. Resistance will result in termination. The council did not understand. Processing? Termination? These words meant nothing good. They sent a reply, asking to negotiate. They offered trade agreements, scientific knowledge, anything the Drevnak might want. They begged for peace. The Drevnak did not respond. 3 days later, the fleet arrived at Korvax Prime. Threnvok was in his garden when he heard the news. His daughter came running from the house, her face white with terror. She held a communication device in her shaking hands. "Father," she said, "they are here. Hundreds of ships. They are surrounding our planet." Threnvok walked slowly to the edge of his property and looked up at the sky. Even in the bright daylight, he could see them. Dark shapes moving against the blue, blocking out the sun. So many of them. More ships than he had ever seen in his life. The Kovani had no fleet to fight them. They had a few patrol vessels, some science ships, some cargo transports. Nothing that could stand against a military force of this size. What do we do? His daughter asked. Thrnvok did not have an answer. The council sent one final message to the Drevnak fleet, begging for mercy. This time, the Drevnak commander responded. His name was Skrix, and his image appeared on every screen across the planet. He was massive, with a black shell and red eyes that seemed to burn with hunger. His mandibles clicked as he spoke. "People of Korvax Prime," he said, "you have one cycle of your sun to surrender completely. When the sun rises again, we will begin the harvest. Your adults will be processed for labor. Your children will be taken for experimentation. Your planet will be stripped of all resources. This is not a negotiation. This is your notification." The screen went dark. Across the planet, people wept. Mothers held their children. Fathers looked at their families and wondered how to protect them. There was no hiding place. There was no escape. The Drevnak ships covered the sky like a blanket of death. The council sent distress signals to every corner of known space. They called out to species they had traded with, species they had helped, species they barely knew. They begged anyone who could hear them to send help. Most of the responses were the same. "We are sorry. The Drevnak are too powerful. We cannot help you." Some species did not respond at all. A few offered sympathy, but nothing more. "We will remember your people," they said. "Your sacrifice will not be forgotten." Cold comfort for those about to die. That night, Threnvok sat with his family in his small house by the lake. His wife, his children, his grandchildren. They held hands and said the prayers of their ancestors. They tried to find peace in the face of destruction. "I do not understand," his youngest grandchild said. She was only 5 years old, with big blue eyes that still believed the world was good. Why do they want to hurt us? We did not do anything to them. Threnvok pulled her into his lap and held her close. Some beings in this universe take from others because they can, he said quietly. They do not need a reason. They have power and they use it. But that is not right, the child said. No, Threnvok agreed. It is not right. But sometimes the universe is not fair. The little girl was quiet for a moment. Then she looked up at him with hope in her eyes. Maybe someone will help us, she said. Maybe someone strong will come and make the bad ones go away. Threnvok smiled sadly and stroked her head. He did not have the heart to tell her that no one was coming. The Kolvani were alone. They had always been alone. But as he sat there in the darkness, with the shadow of death hanging over his world, a memory came to him. A distant memory from 12 years ago. A damaged ship floating in a nebula. A dying creature with pink skin and dark hair. A woman who had promised, with tears in her eyes, that her people would come if he ever needed help. I will never forget this, she had said. None of us will. Threnvok shook his head. It was a foolish hope. That woman was probably dead by now. Even if she was alive, she was one person on a planet far away. How could she possibly know what was happening here? How could she possibly help? He looked up at the sky one last time. The Drevnak ships were still there, waiting like vultures for their prey to die. Tomorrow. The sun would rise. And then the harvest would begin. Threnvok closed his eyes and prepared himself for the end. He did not know that across the galaxy, in a place called Earth, a woman named Katie Morgan was staring at a screen with fire in her eyes. He did not know that she had received a distress signal. He did not know that she remembered every kindness he had shown her, every word he had spoken, every moment of care he had given to a stranger. He did not know that humans never forgot their debts, and he did not know that they always paid them back. Captain Katie Morgan was sitting in her quarters aboard the USS Resolute when the message arrived. It was late in the ship's night cycle, and most of her crew was asleep. She had been reading a book, something she did when the weight of command felt too heavy. The communication alert blinked red. Priority 1. She had never seen a Priority 1 message in her 12 years of service. She put down her book and opened the channel. The message was garbled at first, broken by distance and interference. But slowly, the words became clear. It was a distress call, broadcast on all frequencies, repeating over and over. This is the Kolvani Planetary Council. We are under attack by the Drevnak Collective. Our world is surrounded. We have no military. We have no weapons. We are calling for any assistance. Please. Anyone who can hear this. We are going to die. Please help us. Katie felt her heart stop in her chest. Korvani. She had not heard that name in 12 years. But she had never forgotten it. How could she? Those gray-skinned beings with glowing eyes had pulled her from the wreckage of her ship when she was dying. They had used their own food to feed her. They had used their own medicine to heal her. They had asked for nothing in return. And now they were calling for help. And no one was answering. Katie jumped to her feet and ran to the bridge. Her first officer, a steady man named Ben Crawford, was on the night shift. He looked up in surprise as she burst through the door. Captain? What is wrong? Katie grabbed his arm and pointed at the communication console. Play that Priority 1 message again. The one that just came in. Ben did as she asked. The message filled the bridge, and Katie watched as her crew listened. Their faces showed confusion. Most of them had never heard of the Korvani. Who were these people? Ben asked. They saved my life, Katie said. Her voice was steady, but there was steel in it. 12 years ago, I was stranded in the Vilar Nebula. My ship was destroyed. My crew was dead. I had maybe an hour of oxygen left. And these people found me. They did not know what I was. They did not know if I was dangerous. But they took me aboard anyway. They healed me. They fed me. They kept me alive when they had no reason to. Ben looked at her with new understanding. Everyone in the fleet knew the story of Katie Morgan, the young officer who had survived a pirate attack and made it home against impossible odds. But few knew the details of how she had survived. "What do you want to do, Captain?" Ben asked. "I want to save them," Katie said. "But I cannot do it alone. I need to talk to Admiral Hayes." Admiral Daniel Hayes was the commander of the Third Fleet and one of the most respected officers in the United Terran Navy. He was known for being cautious, calculating, and unwilling to take unnecessary risks. Getting him to authorize a rescue mission for a species that most humans had never heard of would not be easy, but Katie had to try. She sent an emergency request for communication and waited. After 20 long minutes, the Admiral's face appeared on her screen. He was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen many battles. "Captain Morgan," he said, "this better be important. It is the middle of the night." "It is important, sir," Katie said. She told him everything. The distress call, the Drevnak fleet, the Kovani people, and most importantly, her own story. How they had found her dying in space. How they had nursed her back to health. How they had asked for nothing in return. Admiral Hayes listened without interrupting. When Katie finished, he was silent for a long moment. "Captain," he finally said, "what you are asking is not simple. The Drevnak Collective has over 300 warships around that planet. A rescue mission would require a significant portion of our fleet. There would be casualties. There would be political consequences. I cannot authorize this without justification." Katie leaned forward. "Sir, with respect, the justification is simple. These people saved my life. They showed kindness to a stranger when they had nothing to gain. If we abandon them now, what does that say about us? What does it say about humanity? We cannot fight every battle in the galaxy," the Admiral said. "I am not asking you to fight every battle," Katie replied. "I am asking you to fight this one. One battle, for a species that earned our loyalty with their kindness. Sir, if we let them die, we are no better than the Drevnak." Admiral Hayes rubbed his temples. He was quiet for so long that Katie thought he might refuse. Then he looked up at her with something new in his eyes. Something that might have been pride. "I entered the Navy because I believed humanity stood for something," he said quietly. "I believed we were better than the cold, empty universe. That we cared about more than just survival." He paused. "You are right, Captain. If we abandon these people, we lose something more important than ships or soldiers. We lose ourselves." Katie felt hope rise in her chest. "Then you will help?" Admiral Hayes nodded slowly. "I will mobilize the Third Fleet, but that may not be enough. The Drevnak have us outnumbered." "Then call the other fleets," Katie said. "Call everyone? Tell them what I told you. Tell them that the Kovani are our friends, and friends do not abandon each other." The Admiral almost smiled. "You are asking me to start a war, Captain?" "No, sir," Katie said. "The Drevnak started the war. I am asking you to finish it." Admiral Hayes was silent again. Then he straightened in his chair and seemed to grow taller. "Very well," he said. "I will make the calls. But I want you leading the fleet, Captain Morgan. This is your mission. These are your people." "Yes, sir," Katie said. "I will not let them down." Over the next 6 hours, the United Terran Navy came alive. Messages went out to every fleet, every ship, every station. The response was overwhelming. When the officers heard the story of Captain Morgan and the Corvani who had saved her, they did not hesitate. Ship after ship reported ready for departure. The First Fleet responded. The Second Fleet responded. The Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Fleets all sent ships. Reserves were called up. Retired officers returned to duty. A human armada was forming, larger than any force assembled in a generation. 147 warships gathered at the staging point near the edge of human space. Battleships, carriers, destroyers, cruisers, and frigates arranged themselves in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed in the light of distant stars dotted the head of the fleet. The USS Resolute powered up its engines. On the bridge, Captain Katie Morgan looked out at the ships surrounding her. She thought about Threnvok, the gentle captain who had held her hand when she was afraid. She thought about the Kovani crew who had given their own food to keep her alive. She thought about the promise she had made 12 years ago. I will never forget this. None of us will. She had meant every word. Now it was time to prove it. She opened the channel to the entire fleet. Her voice was calm and clear. This is Captain Katie Morgan of the USS Resolute. In a few hours, we will enter Corvani space. We will face an enemy that has destroyed a dozen civilizations. They think they are unstoppable. They think the galaxy belongs to them. But they have never faced humanity. They do not know what we are capable of when we are protecting our friends. She paused, letting the words sink in. The Kovani saved my life when they had nothing to gain. Today, we repay that debt. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity stands for. Today, we remind the universe that kindness is never forgotten. She took a deep breath. All ships, engage jump drives. We are going to war. The stars stretched into lines of light as 147 human warships leaped into hyperspace. The Armada was coming, and the Drevnak had no idea what was about to hit them. Commander Scrix stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the beautiful planet below. Korvax Prime hung in space like a ripe fruit waiting to be picked. Its oceans sparkled blue and green. Its forests covered the land in patches of vibrant color. It was a rich world, full of resources and life. Soon, it would all belong to the Drevnak. Scrix clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. This conquest would be easy. The Kovani had no fleet. They had no weapons. They had spent their entire history running away from danger instead of facing it. They were prey. Nothing more. His communications officer approached with a report. Commander, we have intercepted multiple distress signals from the planet. They have been calling for help across all channels. Scrix laughed, a harsh clicking sound that made his officers flinch. Let them call. No one will answer. Every species in this sector knows better than to challenge the collective. They will watch the Corvani burn and thank their gods that it is not them. He turned back to the window. The sun of this system was beginning to rise over the curve of the planet. When it finished rising, the harvest would begin. Prepare the landing craft, he ordered. The adults go to the labor camps. The children go to the science vessels. And any who resist are to be terminated immediately. His officers hurried to obey. Scrix allowed himself a moment of pleasure. 12 civilizations had fallen before him. 12 species had been harvested, their populations processed, their worlds stripped bare. The Corvani would be number 13, an unlucky number for an unlucky people. Then his censor officer spoke, and the pleasure turned to confusion. Commander, I am detecting unusual readings at the edge of the system. Scrix turned. What kind of readings? Multiple hyperspace signatures. Large ones. The officer's voice was uncertain. They are emerging now. I count. 100. 120. 140. Scrix pushed the officer aside and looked at the screen himself. What he saw made his blood run cold. Ships. Human ships. More ships than he had ever seen in one place. They came out of hyperspace in perfect formation, spreading across the darkness like a wall of metal and fire. Battleships the size of small cities. Carriers launching fighters by the hundreds. Destroyers and cruisers with weapons already glowing with power. 147 warships. All of them pointing their guns at the Drevnak fleet. Impossible, Scrix whispered. The humans are not allies of the Corvani. They have no reason to be here. Before he could say anything else, a transmission came through. A human face appeared on his screen. It was a female, with dark hair and eyes that burned with cold fury. "This is Captain Katie Morgan of the United Terran Navy," she said. 12 years ago, the people of this world saved my life when they had nothing to gain from it. Today, humanity repays that debt. You have one chance to withdraw. Refuse, and we will show you what happens when you threaten our friends. Scrick stared at the screen. Then he began to laugh. "One human?" he said. "All of this for one human? You brought an army to save these pathetic creatures because they rescued one of your kind." "Yes," Katie said simply. "We did." "You are fools," Scrick snarled. "Look at your numbers. We have 300 ships. You have less than half that. We have been conquering worlds since before your species left its cradle. You cannot win." Katie's expression did not change. "You made a mistake, Commander. You thought the Corvani were alone. You thought kindness was weakness. You were wrong on both counts." She leaned forward, and her voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. "Humanity does not forget its debts, and we always pay them back with interest." The transmission ended. SK Rix stood frozen for a moment. Then rage filled him, hot and blinding. No species had ever dared to challenge the collective. No species had ever been foolish enough to stand between the Drevnak and their prey. "All ships," he roared. "Attack formation. Destroy them all." The Drevnak fleet surged forward. The human ships did not retreat. They came to meet them. The Battle of Korvax Prime had begun. On the bridge of the USS Resolute, Katie Morgan watched the enemy ships approach. They came in a swarm, hundreds of black shapes covered with spikes and armor. Their weapons charged. Their fighters launched. They looked like a wave of death sweeping across the stars. "All ships," Katie said calmly. "Fire at will." The human fleet opened up with everything they had. Missiles streaked across the void. Energy weapons carved through the darkness. Fighters clashed with fighters in swirling dogfights. The Drevnak ships were tough, built for war, but the humans had not come unprepared. Every shot was calculated. Every maneuver was precise. They fought like they had nothing to lose. The first Drevnak ship exploded in a ball of fire. Then another. Then 10 more. SK Rix watched in disbelief as his fleet began to crumble. The humans were not fighting like prey. They were fighting like predators. Every time his ships tried to advance, they walked into a trap. Every time they tried to flank, they found human destroyers waiting for them. The enemy moved as one, like a single creature with 100 heads. "Push forward," Scrix screamed. "We still outnumber them. Break through their lines." His ships obeyed, throwing themselves at the human wall. They made progress, destroying human ships, opening gaps in the formation. But for every gap they opened, the humans closed another. For every Drevnak victory, there was a human response. The battle raged for hours. Ships burned and died on both sides. The darkness was filled with fire and wreckage and the bodies of the fallen. But slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. The humans would not break. They took hits that would have made other species retreat. They lost ships, lost friends, lost brothers and sisters in arms. But they kept fighting. When one ship fell, another took its place. When one captain died, another took command. They fought with a fury that Scrix had never seen before, And through it all, the USS Resolute stayed at the front. Katie Morgan stood on her bridge, giving orders, directing the battle. Her ship took damage. Her crew suffered casualties. But she never wavered. She thought about Threnvok down on that planet, waiting for salvation. She thought about all the Corvani children who were afraid of the monsters in the sky. She would not let them down. All carrier groups, she called out. Launch reserve squadrons. Target the enemy flagship. Take out their command structure. The fighters came in waves. Scrix's ship was surrounded, hammered from all sides by missiles and beams. His shields failed. His weapons went offline. And then, with a final, shattering blow, the Drevnak flagship broke apart. Scrix died screaming, his body torn apart by fire and vacuum. Without their commander, the Drevnak fleet fell into chaos. Ships began to retreat, jumping into hyperspace one by one. The swarm that had seemed so unstoppable only hours before was now running for its life. By the time the sun rose fully over Korvax Prime, the battle was over. Katie Morgan looked out at the aftermath. Wreckage filled space like a graveyard. Hundreds of ships destroyed, both human and Drevnak. Thousands of lives lost. The cost had been high, but below her, on the surface of that beautiful planet, the Corvani were safe. She opened a channel to her fleet. Her voice was tired but filled with something that might have been hope. All ships, this is Captain Morgan. The enemy has been defeated. Korvax Prime is secure. She paused, looking down at the planet that had once saved her life. Well done, everyone. We did what we came here to do. Across the fleet, cheers erupted. Crews embraced each other. Tears were shed for the dead and the living alike. On the surface of Korvax Prime, Threnvok stood in the garden of his home, looking up at the sky. The dark shapes were gone. The enemy had fled. And in their place, he could see new shapes moving through the clouds. Human ships descending slowly, peacefully. His daughter ran to him, her eyes wide with wonder. Father, what happened? Who are they? Threnvok felt tears he did not know he could shed running down his face. He remembered a broken ship in a nebula. He remembered a dying woman with dark hair. He remembered a promise made 12 years ago. They are our friends, he said softly. They came to save us. His daughter looked up at the sky, and for the first time in days, she smiled. The Armada had come, and they had kept their promise. The shuttle descended through the clear morning sky of Korvax Prime. Inside, Katie Morgan sat quietly, looking out the window at the world below. The forests were greener than she remembered from the stories. The crystal lakes caught the sunlight and scattered it like diamonds. It was one of the most beautiful planets she had ever seen. She understood now why the Corvani were so peaceful. When your home was this perfect, why would you ever want to fight? The shuttle landed in a field outside a small village. A crowd had gathered there, hundreds of Corvani standing in silence, their luminescent eyes fixed on the human craft. Katie took a deep breath and stepped outside. For a moment, no one moved. The humans and the Corvani simply looked at each other across the grass. Then, slowly, the crowd parted, and an old figure walked forward. THRN-VOK. He was older now, much older than Katie remembered. His gray skin had faded to a paler shade, and his glowing eyes had dimmed with age. He walked with a slight stoop, supported by a wooden cane. But when he saw her face, his eyes widened, and something like wonder filled his expression. "It is you," he whispered. "The human woman from the nebula." Katie felt her throat tighten. She walked toward him, each step feeling heavier than the last. When she reached him, she did not speak. She simply took his hands in hers and held them, just as he had once done for her. "You came back," Threnvok said. His voice trembled with emotion. "After all these years." You actually came back. I made you a promise, Katie said softly. I told you that if you ever needed help, my people would come. Did you think I had forgotten? Threnvok shook his head slowly. I did not know what to think. When the ships came, when the sky turned dark, I thought of you. I wondered if you were still alive. I wondered if you remembered us. But I did not truly believe. He stopped, unable to continue. Tears flowed from his eyes, leaving glowing trails down his face. The Corvani did not often cry. It was not something their bodies were designed to do. But in this moment, something inside him had changed. Why? He finally asked, why did you bring so many ships? Why did you risk so many lives? We are strangers to your people. We are nothing to them. Katie shook her head. You are not nothing. You saved my life when you had no reason to. You showed kindness to someone you did not know. You asked for nothing in return. She paused, looking into his ancient eyes. That means everything to us. She turned and gestured to the shuttle behind her. More humans were emerging now. Soldiers in uniform. Medics carrying supplies. Engineers with equipment to help repair the damage done by the occupation. They spread out across the field, offering help to anyone who needed it. Humans have a saying, Katie continued. We never forget our debts. If someone helps us, we help them back. If someone protects us, we protect them. You gave me my life, Threnvok. How could we do anything less than give you yours? Threnvok looked at the humans moving through his village. They were strange creatures, with their soft skin and their loud voices. They moved quickly, always busy, always doing something. They were so different from the Corvani, but they were also kind. He could see it in the way they helped the injured. He could see it in the way they played with the children who gathered around them. He could see it in their smiles and their laughter and their gentle hands. In my life, Threnvok said slowly, I have met many species. I have traded with them. I have studied them. But I have never met a species quite like yours. Katie smiled. We are complicated. We can be cruel and selfish and destructive. But we can also be kind and loyal and brave. It depends on how we are treated. Show us your worst, and we will show you ours. But show us your best. She squeezed his hands. And we will move the stars for you. The Corvani elder was silent for a long moment. Then he looked up at the sky, where human ships still circled in protective formation. Those ships had crossed the galaxy for his people. Those ships had fought and died for strangers they had never met. All because of a single act of kindness 12 years ago. We only did what was right, he said, repeating the words he had spoken to her long ago. Katie nodded. So did we. In the days that followed, the human fleet remained in orbit around Corvax Prime. They helped rebuild what had been damaged. They treated the sick and wounded. They shared their technology and their knowledge. And they made a promise to the Corvani Council. From this day forward, Katie said, standing before the assembled leaders, humanity and the Corvani are allies. An attack on your people is an attack on ours. You will never face the darkness alone again. The council accepted, and the alliance was sealed. Word of the Battle of Corvax Prime spread across the galaxy. Species who had ignored the Corvani distress call now watched the humans with new eyes. The Drevna Collective, once feared by all, had been broken by a force half their size. The survivors returned to their own space and never threatened the Corvani again. But more than the military victory, it was the story the people remembered. A human woman, saved by strangers, had brought an armada to repay her debt. A species that no one had heard of was now protected by one of the most powerful forces in known space. Kindness, which so many had dismissed as weakness, had proven to be the strongest weapon of all. On the final night before the human fleet departed, Katie and Threnvok sat together on the shore of his crystal lake. The stars were bright overhead, and the trees glowed softly in the darkness. It was peaceful in a way that Katie had rarely experienced. "What will you do now?" Threnvok asked. "Go home," Katie said. "See my family. Write my reports." She smiled. "Probably get yelled at by some politicians who think I started a war without permission." Threnvok laughed, a soft, musical sound. "You did start a war." "I ended one," Katie corrected. "There is a difference." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Threnvok spoke again. "When I found you in that ship, all those years ago, I did not know what I was doing. I only knew that someone was dying, and I could not walk away. I never imagined that such a small act would change everything." Katie looked at him. "That is the thing about kindness. You never know how far it will travel. You never know who will remember it. All you can do is offer it freely and hope that somewhere down the line it makes a difference." Threnvok nodded slowly. "The universe is vast and cold and often cruel. But if there are beings like you in it, perhaps there is hope." Katie smiled and reached out to take his hand one last time. "There is always hope, old friend. As long as there are people willing to help each other, there is always hope." The next morning, the human fleet departed. Katie stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute and watched Korvax Prime shrink behind her. She thought about all the lives that had been saved. She thought about all the lives that had been lost. She thought about the strange path that had brought her here, from a dying woman in a wrecked ship to the commander of a rescue armada. "Captain," her first officer said, "we have received a message from the Corvani Planetary Council. They want to name a holiday after you. They wanted to teach their children about what humanity did here." Katie shook her head. "Tell them not to name it after me. Tell them to name it after the crew of the survey ship that found me. Tell them to name it after Threnvok and his people, who showed kindness to a stranger." She paused. "That is the real story. Not the battle, not the ships. Just ordinary people, choosing to do the right thing." The first officer nodded and went to send the message. Katie looked out at the stars stretching before her. Somewhere out there, other species were watching. Other species were learning. The story of the Corvani and the humans would spread, and maybe, just maybe, it would inspire others to be a little kinder, because that was the lesson of Korvax Prime Dot in a universe that often rewarded cruelty and punished compassion. Humanity had proven something important. They had proven that kindness was not weakness. They had proven that debts of gratitude were worth repaying. They had proven that an armada could be summoned with nothing more than a memory of someone who had once cared. The galaxy was vast and cold and full of monsters. But now it knew that humans remembered their friends. And when you saved a human, an armada would come. The end.